And you'd already had 2 encounters by that point. And I remember Mom just being like, that's the deer you want. You've been putting in this work. That's the deer you're gonna shoot.
Because there was days on end where I didn't see it, see him. Did see some doe. Only seen one other buck in that whole area that whole time.
You got to a couple of days later, and it's getting close. I think you had one more day to be able to hunt.
I'll be honest with you. If another buck would have came in and it was legal, it might have been a different story. Just giving me the reassurance to, talk me off the cliff, so to speak, that, go with your game plan and, it'll happen.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp. With the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 500 here. Before we get rolling here with the podcast with my dad, I wanted to read a little bit of something that I wrote. I'm dedicating this episode to my grandfather who had recently passed away in the last few weeks. And if it wasn't for him and what he has instilled in me, there's a good chance that I'd never be doing what I'm doing. So he was a Korean era Army vet. He was a Golden Glove boxer, a smoke jumper in Alaska, a hunter, a fisherman. He was a father of 4 boys. He's a grandfather, a great grandfather, and a whole lot more. Growing up, my memories with my grandpa, one of the fondest memories that I remember is fishing with him, specifically catfishing at my parents' pond. And he took his fishing very seriously, and talking was not allowed if you wanted to catch fish, and he definitely did. So if any of you that are listening that did know him, you never had to guess what was on his mind. But as I got older, he started telling me stories about his younger years and going to Alaska to fight forest fires and leaving the outskirts of Pittsburgh to move up north to the mountains where he would live the rest of his life. And he kept telling me that I needed to go to Alaska and figure out how to do whatever I wanted in my life. And I didn't know it at the time, but he definitely instilled that adventure in me that ultimately changed my life. I'll never forget every time that he would ask me, where are you off to go hunt next? And which was followed by him getting out a paper map and going through it and showing me the route, asking about what route I was taking. And somehow he always had a story that would go along with it. Like when he drove to Alaska in an old car on the Alaskan highway and had tire blowouts 15 times. And he ultimately had to sell that car when he was there just to be able to eat. But that's just one story that he had. And in the final months of his life, he said a couple things that will stick with me for the rest of my life. And one, he told me that he was proud of me for figuring out how to live life on my terms. And lastly, he asked me something, said, you don't fish much anymore, do you? He's like, you don't have time. And I said, yeah, I just don't have time for it right now. And he said, there's always time to go fishing. So I just wanted to dedicate this episode to my grandfather, and may he rest in peace and fly high. I know he'll be on every adventure from here on out, and he'll be impacting all of us that we're lucky enough to be able to know him. But enjoy this episode with my dad, and I appreciate everyone listening. All right, we are live. We are back. This is episode number 500.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I know. It's crazy. So it's been since July 1st of 2018 is when I launched the first episode, and we're recording this. It's going to go out a few weeks later, but on July 3rd, 2026. So it's quite a while.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to think about it. When I had started this back then, what was your initial thoughts?
Well, I mean, I thought it was a good thing. I mean, you were gearing it towards out west, east meeting the west. Eastern hunters going out and doing western hunting, and I thought it was a real good idea because a lot of people back here, didn't have that knowledge or the experience, and you had some good people on there that definitely helped the people that did want to go out there or to cross that bridge and hopefully make them chances of being more successful.
Yeah. And what about like when I started talking about the whitetail side of things?
Well, that there I mean, it was now you're it's like, okay, Beau's going to give away some secrets here. But no, I seen the need for it. I mean, I was all for it. I think there's some relatives and friends that at first weren't, they were very supportive, but I don't think they cared for it. But I mean, you got to look at the big picture, and it's, you got to, you look at what's going on, I guess, what is it, Oregon, where they're fighting for their rights, or they're trying to introduce, but we need numbers. We need people who are actively involved in hunting. And your podcast is just one other avenue that helps, people stay involved, want to be involved. Just on your last, your scouting camp you had just last, there was a handful of newbies, I want to call them, that were just getting into it. And I don't know if I don't know if there was any of them that got in it because of your podcast, but when they started Googling hunting and archery or whatever, you're just hunting in general, your podcast would pop up, and I think we definitely need that. I mean, like it or not, I'm not. I know, some people, but I think actually I've run into people here in the last couple of years that said, "Yeah, I wasn't too happy about, might blow up an area and this and that." But you've been good with that as far as not disclosing, stuff like that, and using dummy topos and stuff like that. But they finally see the need, that we need numbers. We need the backbone. We need the support.
Yeah, no, and it's from day one, you definitely always supported me with it, but I was surprised from the standpoint of because how secretive you have, and you still are, and we all still are, like when it comes to specifics, but from the standpoint of growing up very secretive on hunting and talking about your tactics and going through it. But you had said something not on the podcast, but offline recently about that specific topic of like, it's, almost feeling like I don't know if you said it this exact way, but like a calling to need to or an obligation to pass some of that stuff along, the woodsmanship and the things that you've learned over all these years, because it's not as readily available as the information's readily available, but as far as families passing it down isn't as readily available as it was when you were growing up. Like it's different now, and everyone's busy, and it's harder for people to get away, and the deer camps and everything are slowly dying. And as much as like it might seem like there might be pressure in your specific area or whatever, overall hunter numbers are going down. And when you have things like Oregon that you brought up, was like they're I might get the exact specifics wrong on this episode, but pretty much they are trying to pass a bill to get rid of hunting. They worded it in a really strategic way.
I mean, it crosses over into
ranching too. Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's actually a new thing that I was just on a call with recently here, and I wasn't prepared to totally talk about the specifics of it, but it's called the right to hunt, and some states have done it already, where you can get it right in the state's constitution of having
I did see
the
something
right
like that.
to hunt and fish. And so I had a meeting with some of the people that were the ones that are getting it passed. They got it passed in Florida. Right now they're trying for Colorado, which the reason why they go for Colorado is because Colorado is going to be one of the toughest ones. And it's like, if you can get it passed there, you can probably get it passed in the other states and go through it. And that's why it's important, even if you're not from Colorado or live there, to pay attention to those things and understand it, because it can come on, your doorstep as well.
Right.
So yeah, anyways, that, it's funny. I won't mention his name on here just in case he doesn't want me to, but there was a guy both you and I met at Johnny's camp there recently. It was so funny. He came up to me. He's like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, I did not like you or anything that you were doing for the longest time when it started it." And he's like, and then I started understanding it, and then we got to meet each other and everything. He's like, "I just want to let you know I was wrong, and I support what you're doing." And I said, "You know what?" I said, "I appreciate that you're man enough to say that to me."
Yeah. No, and I think that was a lot of the attitude. No, I wouldn't say a lot. There was, I think a lot of the die-hard hunters felt that way initially. But I think that, I think they realize that it's needed. I mean, our hunter numbers are declining, and you got to constantly try to bring in new hunters.
Yeah.
For every state, not just Pennsylvania, for every, nationwide.
Yeah. And I mean, if we want to be, selfish about it and be like, oh, keep everything kind of, it's not that we know everything. I'm not saying that, but, keep that information that you've learned over those years quiet. I mean, that's good for you in the time being, but looking at future generations, that stuff will eventually kind of die off. That's the only way things are. I mean, you can learn things obviously firsthand of getting out and experiencing it, but if you don't have even the want to go out and do that in the first place, then it just gets lost.
Right. And I mean, it's a wealth of knowledge. I mean, I learn a lot of stuff listening to your other guests and implement some of the tactics, but it's definitely a shortens the learning curve for somebody new at it, or somebody who is going from, even come from another state or going to another state. Your western portion of it's still there, and
yeah. And so for anyone that's listening that wasn't following along from the beginning, like the whole podcast started with exactly what you said, of me wanting to learn more about hunting out west. And at that time, this has changed now, and that's kind of a little bit of why everything has changed with the podcast, but that information is readily available. But at the time, it was not. In 2016, when me and Kurt Mason went out for the first time out west, it was hard to find information, and everyone back home was like, "Oh, how'd you plan that? I wish I had your money or your time." And it was not, I had neither of those. I had 2 weeks vacation, and I was not making good money or anything. It was just being able to figure out how to plan these hunts and go and do it. And selfishly, I wanted to learn from people that I wouldn't have access to without the podcast. And then I was like, if I put a mic on and talk to these people about it, I think I can ask questions in a way that's coming from someone from the East that would be more relevant, because there was some podcasts out at that time, but they were Western hunters talking to Western hunters. So there's a lot of that new stuff that's being missed in that process. So that's kind of the goal of it. And it really wasn't until actually, I'm going to be interviewing him again. I hadn't talked to him since 2018, but Kelly McGraw from Wild at Heart, they had I talked with them, and we were talking about Western hunting, but they're from Pennsylvania as well, and hunt the mountains and hunt the big woods, and they were just like, we started talking about that, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, that's awesome," and I didn't think anybody cared about that, because at the time hunting media was all focused around farm country hunting for the most part,
right?
And so it was like I didn't realize it, and And it was like, oh, that's easy for us to talk about because that's what we've done for our whole lives. And so that.
Yeah, it's not as glamorous, though, as the farm country as far as at least the size of the bucks.
Yeah.
I mean, they're getting bigger.
Yeah,
but
they are.
Yeah, it's definitely not as glamorous.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to what you were saying about as far as, spotlighting an area or talking about it, say even just like Pennsylvania alone, like Pennsylvania has definitely gotten better throughout, but I always joke about it. If someone were to follow my truck for the most part, like they're not getting any better than where if they went and found their own areas. I believe in most of the East Coast. I've been to quite a few states now and in the Midwest. You can find a mature buck in most places. It's just learning that area and putting that time into doing it. Yes, are there a few exceptional bucks for any larger area in specific areas here and there? But yes, but it's as you talked about before, even when you shot stickers, was like that's even finding a deer that's like a once in every 6 to 10 year type period. So that's I always laughed about that because it's like you can try to take a shortcut and or like there'll be things that are people will share trail camera photos online, and it's honestly when they start doing that and you start looking, you can, if I wanted to do specific research, I could find where someone's at in probably a short amount of time. And it's like, oh, do you see this deer? Are you going to try to go find it and hunt it? I was like, I really don't care. I got my own.
I've got enough irons in the fire.
I got enough irons in the fire, and I've got my own problems with trying to figure out deer to try to go somewhere else and figure something out. But it's for anyone that's listening, like I haven't found a place yet that I've traveled to. I've hunted public land, I've hunted private land, I've hunted everything and in between, and where you can't find a mature buck,
right?
And to be able to do it,
I agree with
that. And I just see it from even the Mountain Buck Monday submissions that come in from all different states. I blank out a lot of the information that people give me in their stories to try to save their own spots, but it's pretty equal across the board that I'm starting to see mature deer coming out of states that you wouldn't have thought of before. Nice racks, still again not with the genetics and the feed that you can get in a lot of the Midwest places, but some of them can get close. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
It's pretty cool to see. But so I guess I didn't bring it up at the beginning, but I've got my dad, Joe Martonik, on here. So, Dad, you were requested to be on episode 500.
Oh, really?
I put out a poll, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, they said they wanted.
I didn't see that poll.
Yeah, I kept it away from you, but they wanted you on, and I was like, "You guys sure?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's what we wanted." So, but no, I'm joking aside here, but when it comes to thinking about I guess before we get into that, I got a few announcements to make in the midst of episode 500. So I've got a couple notes here. I am doing a big giveaway, and this giveaway is going to go through the entire month of July. So if you it's East Meets West hunt.com/deer/camp/giveaway, or you can just go to my main website, eastmeetswesthunt.com, and there's a big banner you can click on there. I might have said that wrong. I just typed it in. It says page not found, but I'll get that fixed by the time this goes out. But you can go there, and I'm giving away over $5,500 worth of gear, including a Hoyt AX3 bow. We've got Tacticams, we've got Maven Optics, we've got Mountain Op supplements, we've got Sitka gear, we've got a dialed archery sight. I mean, Timber Ninja, the brand new Ronin and MK. So we've got an absolute ton. Spartan Forge 3-year membership. I mean, we've got a ton of stuff that's getting thrown into it. One of the new custom East Meets West case knives that there's only a few of them that are made. So there's a ton of stuff that's being given away. So you can get entered. I'll have it in the show notes here just in case I had the link wrong that I mentioned here. Look in the show notes or just go to eastmeetswesthunt.com and I'll make sure it's readily available that you can click on and get entered. There's a couple different ways to win. You can enter for free by just putting your email in and entering. And then also, if you buy anything off the website, for every $1 spent, you get one extra entry into to be able to win. So, and for those of you who don't know, I now have a gear shop. I've been slowly building it over the last year. So I've got Timber Ninja stuff on there. I've got what do I got on the Iron Will? I've got Broadheads on there. I've got Uncharted Supply first aids, survival type stuff. I've got Rack Hub for hanging your mounts. I've got Graxaw mounts, skull hangers. I've got Graxaw boot dryers that I like to use. A lot of gear that I tend to like to use. I've got that all now where you can buy it through my website and be able to check that out. So, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. I'm pretty excited and to get all those partners in it. We're calling it the Deer Camp giveaway. So it's everything, to have a pretty good whitetail setup worth of gear. So yeah, bunch of stuff there. So make sure you get entered into that. And speaking of that, Dad, I have a gift for you here. So I've got one of those case East Meets West knives that I told you about. And so there's two styles of it, but I went with the one that's the trapper with the bone stag handle and the clip on it.
Very
so the
nice.
Traditional case, trapper style knife that they've been known for.
Oh, there's your logo.
Yep. So it's nice and subtle in there.
Heck yeah.
What are they? Oh, the guys at Case are going to get mad because I can't remember the name. What is the name of this part of the knife? Starts with a B. So the knife guys on here will hit me up on it. But I always joke with them. I when they start giving me these terms on knives, I'm like, I'll be like, oh, and I start like throwing all these terms out and trying to act smart.
Well, thank you.
But yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, so you have that. It's one of a few that are made. So yeah. But anyways, all right. Well, let's get into kind of the meat and potatoes of the podcast here. So thinking about episode 500, this is looking back at the last 8 years or so. But now as far as you with whitetail hunting, how many years has it been since you started deer hunting?
I don't know. I was 12. Do the math.
Almost this will be year 48.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Or no, 47, 48, somewhere around there.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So almost 50 years of hunting, and at least in my recollection, there was 1 year that you didn't fill your buck tag.
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
If you would have just, that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
If you would have just filled that tag, I could have said you shot a buck every year, but here you are, and you screwed that up.
So yeah, I was being picky.
I know. But you've spent a lot of time doing that, but back in the early days, and that wasn't all mature bucks that was across that board. You've had a journey of going through and hunting whitetails. So like from when you started, when you're younger to now, like what are some of those things that have changed, or how do you want to kind of approach that?
Well, I mean, I guess when I first started hunting, there was a lot of deer, a lot more deer, and there were a lot more hunters. And mainly rifle hunted. And I could just remember hunting with my dad, and and we didn't sit. I mean, he might have did some pushes for us or here and there, but most of the time we just still hunted, and crept and looking over the ridges and crept along. But it just seemed like we were just constantly bumping into hunters or seeing hunters. I mean, it was a lot higher pressure than it is now back then. But you would see 30, 40 deer. and be lucky if one of them was a buck. Or, and back then, we weren't after a rack. There wasn't very few, very, very few and far between as far as even something, a large 8-point or larger. Don't get me wrong, every once in a while, maybe, I don't even know if it was once a year, but every couple of years, somebody in the area would shoot a really nice one and be like, wow, where'd that one come from? Mm-hmm. And were they always there? I don't know. I think not. I don't think, you didn't have the cameras back there, and obviously, so, what you knew about is what you seen spotting or just boots on the ground, doing your own scouting, which, those older bucks tend to be nocturnal. So, and if they weren't out by the road for the spotting, you probably weren't going to see them just hiking through the woods, and unless you got into the bedroom and jumped them, and then usually didn't get eyes, as far as laying your eyes on them, a good identification either. Mm-hmm. But no, it was a lot more deer, a lot more hunters, especially in the rifle season, and it was, if it was a legal buck, which was a spike, as long as it was over, one spike had to be over 3 inches, you were happy with that. And through the years, and as far as the timber, or the forest, it was all, there was very few clear cuts, at least in my area. Yep. The other areas may have been different, but I know that there was very few clear cuts, so it was a lot of bigger timber, and a lot of hemlock groves we hunted, but. I think the clear cut started probably coming around maybe, 30 years ago. They started doing, more and more logging.
Yeah.
It could have been even further back then, or more than that. And I'm just the areas that I hunted, I'm speaking from. And it wasn't until probably when I was 16, 17, probably around 16, is when me and my brothers kind of started hunting for a nicer rack, which we didn't tell Dad.
Yeah.
He found out you passed up a buck.
Yeah. Passed up meat.
Yeah, that's meat. You did not, and then we would get back home, and get together and he'll ask us what we seen and this and that, and, wonder why we didn't bring a deer in that day and or fill our tag that day. And this is like, then we'd be on the side talking, oh yeah, I seen this one, but he wasn't, and he did overhear us once or twice, and yeah, we got a tongue lashing.
Yeah,
but then when we would shoot a nice buck, though, he was all about it.
Yeah,
he was very excited, and then it was like, he started catching on, and
yeah.
And it's like, and he had, I guess prior to that, he had shot a real nice buck in 1963. I believe it was a real big 8-point.
That's the one in Uncle Dave's garage, right? Dismounted.
Yep. And that was a, really big buck for that time frame.
Yeah, there's actually footage of that in that old,
yes, there is.
That old film with Grandma next to it. I don't think Grandpa's in the.
Grandpa. Well, maybe not in that film, but there's some photos with Grandpa holding Uncle Dave with the buck and that.
Yeah,
but so, anyways, it was. I guess as far as the history of PA, they actually, if I think I got this right, but they brought deer in from Michigan and stocked them in our area, because in the early 1900s, they pretty much decimated. It was like the Pennsylvania desert. There wasn't any trees anywhere. You see photos, at least from where I grew up, and there wasn't a tree standing.
Yep.
And so I think they was in the 30s, maybe the 40s when they introduced. I probably have these dates wrong, but there were some big bucks being killed then, and then it kind of tapered off. It was cyclic.
Yeah. So the way, and I remember Kenny explaining some of this to me with the history of it, and I was reading when I was reading the book on like the history of like a bunch of Pennsylvania. There was like a ton of clear cutting going on. Yeah, like you said, in the early 19th or I guess it'd be the 20th century. Mm-hmm. And is that right? Yeah, 20th century. That'd be the 1900s. It's
Yeah.
not. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I had a brain fart there, but it. So yeah, early 1900s. They had just wiped everything out, like you had said, and then I was trying to figure out why, because I had heard about like the 1930s was the time frame when there was a lot of like really big deer that
And
were
there's really thick clear cuts.
Yeah,
everything
clear
coming back.
cuts were getting super thick, and then sounds like again. Fact check us on it, but as far as the time when they brought in, other deer there, and then it seemed to, taper off.
Well,
again.
your forests got more mature and they're easy to, could get them out of there, easier to hunt. But yeah, but then, so you got, so I'm in my, mid-teens, like I said, started, hunting for more of a challenge or, something with a decent rack. And a rack, a good buck back then, you're talking
faster rack.
Yeah. And it might have broke 100, 110 inches. It was a really good deer back then. It's, at least, the areas that I hunted. And then, I guess moving forward, when you started getting more clear cuts, I got back into bow hunting probably in the late 80s. I got back into it. I had kind of given it up for a while.
Yeah.
And just, I guess, life getting in the way.
Yeah.
But I started getting back into it there in the late 80s and started, having better encounters early season, with hunting apple trees, which is pretty much the only food source besides browse that the type of timber I was hunting back then. And then I guess it was in the 90s or late 90s, early 2000s when when you guys started. Well, you were born in 92 and Kurt 94, so probably 2004 is when you first were able to hunt. Was that when you were 12?
Yeah, 2004.
Yeah, so then it was like I wanted to get everything done in archery, so I didn't have to worry about picking a rifle up and just dedicate all the time to getting you in the woods and trying to get fill your tags. But then there was even more clear cuts popping up and yeah, I mean, I think they're doing a very good job managing the timber now. And I'm some of the things Kenny has brought to light as far as, you can't just go and do a 50-acre clear cut and expect it to regenerate, because that's like, throwing a bag of corn and all the deer come to it. You got to do a big swath to where it's spread out and they just don't have an impact.
Yep.
Or as much of an impact. And I think that's, the direction they were taking and getting these, you got some pretty good clear cuts around here.
Yeah.
And it's definitely very helpful for the forest, but also helpful for the deer's health and the population.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And as far as like when, looking back, I guess when you were getting into bow hunting, and maybe it's better when you got back into it, were you hunting out of a tree at all at that point, or were you on the ground?
Mostly on the ground.
Okay.
I did do some sits in trees, but we didn't have the tree stands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was something you made, or you climbed up and sat on a limb, threw a board in there or two, but mostly it was on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that still hunting? Like, you were talking about when you were a kid and in your teens of still hunting and, checking through the ridges. Obviously with a bow, that changed that a little bit.
Yeah, the only time I would try to get in a tree with a bow was if I know there was an apple tree that was dropping, and I knew that right before dark those deer would funnel in.
Yep.
Then it didn't make sense to be on the ground. So you tried to get in a tree and ambush them.
Yep.
But if there was no apple crop, then you had no choice. But back then my thought pattern was there's no choice but to get on the ground if you want to have action.
Yep.
So,
And were in those time frames, were you having success in those early years
Oh, yeah.
with the bow?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, you'd filled your tags every year, but like, what was like what you look at how you're hunting deer now? Was it similar to then, or was it different at that point? Because I mean, obviously, cameras weren't really out in
No,
that
it
time
definitely.
frame.
I guess it was definitely different. I mean, it was most of the time back then. My buck tag was filled through a rifle. I did fill some with archery, but archery, I looked at it I was being selective.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. I made with. When did I think the doe season come in the early 2000s when you could? Because there used to only be a 2-day doe season back when I was, in the 80s, I guess, or even the 70s. But once you were allowed to shoot a doe, early season, then that would, get meat in the freezer, and then you could be selective as far as a rack goes.
Yep.
And then once rifle come in, though, it was pretty much first legal buck, just because there was so much pressure.
Yep.
And the deer just would be. There was no pattern, no more. They were just,
Right.
I mean, actually from Thanksgiving on, they would, people started moving in that Friday after Thanksgiving and just still be in the woods setting stands up and, putting their ground blinds in. And that's pretty much just took any pattern away.
Yeah.
So even, come Monday, they were just running.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And for the number of hunters too, there was a lot of rifle hunters back then.
Yeah.
And now I think that with the legalization, especially with the legalization of crossbows, you got a lot of them rifle hunters coming into the bow hunting.
Yep.
Archery, I want to call it. I guess I don't want to call it bow hunting.
Yeah. The archery.
The archery season.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's split it up versus where there was there very many people archery hunting when you were doing it at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean there was I guess my hunting world was small.
Yeah, so your circle was
and as far as my circle of friends, there's a few of us that bow hunted.
Mm-hmm.
But so that was kind of and I guess, as the years, as the bucks did start getting bigger, the clear cuts, to where these deer were surviving the rifle hunters. I mean, I can remember putting drives on, deer drives with, in rifle season, and you have a buck squirt, you have two drivers that are within 50 yards of each other going through a clear cut, and the big bucks will squirt right through you.
Yep.
And so they weren't getting them out of there, So you're starting to get more and more mature bucks, and then that's to where as even being more selective. Well, then the cameras came around, and then you seen what was out there, and then it made you like what I would normally maybe shoot before the cameras is like, well, I know there's better deer to be had.
Yep.
So it made it made me work harder to try to figure them bigger deer out, these older deer, what do I got to do different? What am I doing wrong here? And, and that was all, a lot of that was trial and error and maybe reading some things in the magazines, but, or learning from my dad or learning from, my father-in-law, and, some of my friends,
Yep.
sharing what was successful for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, the cameras definitely made, the challenge or the reach for the higher fruit, I guess.
Yeah. When did you start using cameras?
Boy, I don't know what year it was. It was, there were film cameras, but, I don't know if it was, it had to be maybe in the 90s, early 90s. I don't know if it was late 80s. Could have been. I don't even know.
Oh,
I don't
really?
even know
That
when,
early?
I don't
Okay.
even know when the first film camera came out. I may have the dates wrong, but it
Well,
was.
I remember as a
wasn't
kid you making cameras.
Yeah, I used to try. Yeah, yeah. I try to make some. and use-
How are you doing that? Because you'd buy like the film cameras,
Yeah.
like you would buy at CVS or wherever to take photos and get developed, and you were making your own
Yeah,
boxes.
you had to use and then you had to get into the trigger and wire in a motion sensor. Yeah,
Did they work good?
not really.
I always wondered because I remember actually, down at this bar,
Yeah,
you'd have it all set
Yeah.
out there, and you were making your own cameras. I remember
yeah,
that.
because there was very few cameras available as far as brands,
Yeah.
and they were expensive.
Yep.
And the film was expensive too. But yeah, it may have been late 90s when I started.
I do remember. I mean, I remember the first picture I remember seeing was probably no, that wouldn't be correct because I had a camera before that. I got a camera when I was 12. Didn't Grandpa
Yeah.
Cherry give me a camera,
Yeah.
a film camera? I think it was an old
So that'd
stealth
been around
cam.
94, right?
That'd have been
No,
2004.
not 94. No, yeah, 2004.
Yeah, that's what. But I was obviously younger at that point, and I know you were getting them developed for long.
Yeah.
I remember it since I was younger than that.
Yeah, I'm thinking I probably started using cameras in the late 90s at the earliest now. Maybe even early 2000s.
Well, you had like the trip wires and stuff before that. Didn't you?
Yeah. But no, that
Trip
definitely,
timers. Sorry, not trip wire. He's not trying to not tripping the actual deer, but to
Yeah.
do that.
Nope, you just looked and you knew what time something crossed through that trail, and you didn't know if it was a deer or another person, or,
Yeah.
and it's what other animal it could have been. But
Yeah, because I remember we still have the picture on the fridge
mhm.
here down in the basement. That'd have been 2005.
Yep, 2005.
2005 of your 11 point that was over.
Right.
It's over there on the pedestal mount next to stickers. That I remember that deer like it was yesterday because that was November the 11th, or was it the 8th? It was the 8th. You probably have it written on a photo somewhere here. You used to have a photo of it here, but
Yeah.
I can't believe it might have been the 8th. For
I
some
think it was
reason,
the 8th.
I think the 8th
Yeah.
is sticking in my head because I get off the school bus and I remember that tree. I don't think that tree's even still there in the front yard, but there was that pine tree there.
No, that's been replaced, but yeah.
Yeah, but it was because you got the pictures right there, and I want to say got off the school bus and you were coming home with it not long after that. I
Mhm.
remember that like it was yesterday, that deer.
Yeah, because I shot that probably, I think it was 11:05 a.m.
Okay.
And by the time I got out, probably would have been about the time you're getting off the school bus as far
Yeah.
as getting it back to the house.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, so that deer, that picture that's on the fridge, wasn't that the only picture you had of that deer?
Yeah. Yep. And that was a film camera. And I think I remember when I went to check the camera, there was only like 8 photos and you had 24 exposure. I think you had choice between 12 or 24, if I remember right. But I had a 24 exposure film in there. And it's like you didn't want to, film was expensive. So you wanted to run it, fill the film up before you got them developed, but it was just killing me because the scrape was tore up. It's like, I got it. I'm a switch this film. And then you run down. I think it was CBS, I think we went to the CBS store and we got them developed.
Yeah.
And they had 1 hour. I think they had the 1 hour photo back then.
Yeah, they did.
And you just sit there pace in the parking lot and go back in, and it was like Christmas.
Yeah, and so that was in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah. And so then I started doing some more scouting there, and I guess the layout was you had a clear cut on the top, and this was down like on a bench. The hill was, I mean, it wasn't a huge elevation change, but it was, it came off out of the clear cut and went down and went onto this bench. Then there was another drop into a drainage system. But the scrape was on that bench. And, I figured he was living in the clear cut, or at least feeding in the clear cut. And there was also a black cherry grove where the scrape was. And there were some black cherries that year. So I'm thinking, I'm going to sit here every day until I kill this deer. And I think I put in, I don't want to say it was 21 sits, not in a row, but if I went hunting, it was there.
Yep.
And, from the beginning of the season, and I never seen a deer. And I remember the morning that I went in, or the day I ended up killing them. I climbed a tree. I was sitting in, using a climber, and it was warming up quick. It was a frosty morning, so I thought I had a real good feeling about, I was going to kill this buck that morning. And it didn't work out, and it was getting, I don't know, probably 10 a.m. and it's already, the temperature's just climbing. I think it was already up to like 45, 50, and it was sunny, and it's like, you know what, I gotta make a move on this deer. And prior to that year, I'd spent most of my time on the ground. This tree stuff was new to me.
Yep.
And the patients were definitely wearing thin, because I didn't have them like I do now. And so it's like, you know what, I'm going in after them. So I got down out of the tree, checking the wind, and I had to make a kind of a loop around below the clear cut and get up because the wind was coming across this way. And so I made a pretty good loop around, got up in the clear cut and just started working it, with my the wind in my face, and I'm just grunting and crashing and breaking shit here and there, and I was probably in there, I don't know, I might have got in the clear cut like by 10:30. I started hunting, and I shot him at 11:05.
Oh, okay. So relatively quick.
Yeah, it wasn't in there too long. And I grunted, and I heard a grunt back, and then I heard crashing, and I ended up jumping up on a deadfall. I was standing on a log because I wanted to get above some of the brush, because the way he was coming wasn't the way, the skid trail kind of went this way, and the crashing was coming over here.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, there was an old, I was able to get an arrow in it. But anyways, I jumped up on this log.
You didn't have LiDAR at that time.
No, I did not have LiDAR. No, I didn't have LiDAR at the time. Would have been very helpful.
Yeah.
But I jumped up on this log and went to full draw, and he popped out, and I just seen the frame. I didn't know it was him. But
yeah.
I knew it was a really good deer, and ended up doing a frontal on him, and he took off, and I heard him crash. Wasn't 100% sure he's down, and Uncle Al was within probably I think a mile of me hunting, and relatively same area, but again, I'm getting a hold of him, and he was actually, he came and met me over by my truck then, and then he's like, well, let's go at least try to find your arrow. And so we went in there and we found the arrow. Well, no, we couldn't find the arrow, but we started finding some really good blood. And I said, I heard a lot of crash, and I said, but of course I heard that when he was coming in. So,
Yeah.
And we only went maybe 40, 50 yards, and there he was laying there.
Huh.
And it threaded the whole way through him.
I remember
the
that
back
picture
leg.
because the arrow is sticking
Coming
out
out,
with
yeah.
the muzzy foreblade sticking out the back leg.
Yep. And so that was a real good hunt. That was my biggest deer to date at that time.
Yeah. That and I always remember that it was such a big deal about that, maybe a little over an inch, but drop tine
Yeah.
that he had coming off
Yeah.
the side. Because I feel like you see trash a little more now than you did in that time frame. Or is that Am I not thinking correctly?
No, I think you're right. I mean, they
Or maybe it's just we have more cameras
yeah,
now.
we didn't have the cameras to do the inventory that we're doing now.
Yeah. But yeah, he's got that little drop tine coming off there, but roll tall tines, kind of narrow rack. And yeah, I mean, you still got the arrow leaning up against the mount that you shot him with there.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. But I remember that deer. I feel like that was one of those deer when you shot that kind of kicked off a lot for me, even at that point of like, wow, like there's some big deer that's potentially out there to be able to hunt. And then I shot a deer that December.
Yeah.
With you rifle hunting when I would have been 13.
Yep.
Which was a deer at the time that everyone locally, especially a lot of the old timers, were like, "Oh, you'll never shoot one any bigger than that in your life."
Yeah,
and just kept.
I was on board with that too. I didn't think you would either.
Yeah.
And that's when they were just starting to come back or coming around as far as
like score wise, again thinking back at that time frame when there wasn't like that 11 point that you shot there at 137 and an eighth inches was. I mean, and it still is, a huge deer, but at that time, it was just most deer that you'd see in the paper that were getting close to, winning buck contests for 100 to 110 inches. So, like, you see something that's 137, it was like unheard of. And then I shot that one that was 21 inches wide, that 8 point. I was with you. I mean, I didn't do anything for it other than pull the trigger, but,
well, we put a stock on that too.
We did put a stock on that.
There was a lot of snow on it.
But you had said you were like, up until if you wouldn't have shot that deer, that one I shot would have been bigger than anything that you had killed up until that point. Yeah. And you were joking like, "Oh, glad I shot that one earlier." So your second year on,
you had outdone me in your second year on.
Yeah, it was. But I remember that. I think that deer I shot, that 8 point, he was 118 inches, if I remember.
I think that's
correctly.
Accurate,
yeah. Short tines, super wide. Do you remember that? How I don't want to say I called my shot, but my dream was as a kid was shooting something that looked like the Rompolo.
Yeah,
buck.
and you drew pictures of you holding a buck.
Everyone's probably laughing now because obviously that has come out. That is more than likely not a real deer. But when that came out, and was it the late 90s that he shot that, early 2000s, or right around 2000? It had to have been, maybe 98, 99, somewhere in there. Grandpa Cherry had a bunch of the magazines that had that deer was plastered all over, and I just drew that. I love drawing, so I draw that and we carve it into wood, and the Rompolo buck was like the epitome of everything, and I wanted something that went straight out and wrapped around, and I shot it just
you got it
100 inches smaller than that deer was, but yeah, it was.
That was a good buck though.
It was,
real
yeah.
good buck.
I know. I was just looking at the mount the other day. I need to find a spot for it again, sitting in the basement on a chair. But it's still looking good. It was a little dusty, but yeah, that I remember that because there was a ton of snow that day and everything when we snuck in on them, and there was 2 bucks, and you had no idea which one I shot.
No, I did not. But there was an apple orchard there, and we were still hunting our way into it, and figuring they're going to be digging for apples, and sure enough, they were there.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, and so you'd shot that, that 11 point on the ground, and was, I guess around that time you're starting to see more mature bucks and starting to see a little bit of bigger antlers. And again, like you said, you don't know exactly if it was, not seeing them on camera. There was also starting to be less deer, so there's less competition. I mean, there was definitely less deer. There's probably the lowest deer density that I can remember was around that time frame.
Yep.
And so there's less competition, so they might have more food with the cutting. were still a decent amount of hunters at that time frame. But
We
maybe
lost a
starting to-
lot of hunters by that year because, well, they were
still
tapering
felt like
off.
a lot as a
Yeah,
kid.
yeah,
seeing-
they were tapering off.
because of the low deer numbers.
Yep, because of low deer numbers. People would go out and not see a deer, and it's like, I'm done doing this. So, but no, that that time frame is when they definitely started. We started seeing larger deer, more mature deer, larger body size.
Yep.
I mean, prior to that, prior to all the doe, licenses being allocated, if an apple hit the ground, there was 5 deers waiting for, deer waiting to eat it. Then after that all happened in that mid, early, 2005 time frame, 2004 on, you'd go on under an apple tree and there's apples laying everywhere, and very, very little deer sign. But then, since then it definitely has come back. But so the deer were getting better nutrition. You had, and then the clear cuts were also becoming more prevalent. Were the bit larger ones at that stage of the at least from what I recollect. So they were surviving. But no, it was a good time to be in the woods. But you had to have the understanding that you may go days without seeing a deer. But if you had your target in mind, or had a photo or a visual on a particular buck, that kept you going.
Yep.
And after me shooting this one, I realized it was possible.
Yeah.
Because there's other years prior to that, you get a real nice buck on film and of the same caliber, and then it's just like you never see it, and you end up shooting something else, and and then it's once started figuring them out more and trusting your instincts, your gut, spending time in the woods and learning the game better. It'll work out once in a while.
And trusting your gut becomes easier, not easy, but easier once you have the ability. Once you have an experience that it has worked, that allows you to be like, okay, this is possible, like you just said, said before that, because I feel like that's a question that gets asked all the time. We've seen at the scouting camp.
Yeah.
You guys talk about trusting your gut. How do you trust your gut? Well, at the beginning, it's really hard because you don't have that experience to back on. So you kind of are not taking a shot in the dark, but a little bit as far as trying to trust the sign that you're seeing, but without that real experience, or maybe you hear it on here or whatever. But once you have that first encounter or a success of shooting a deer, doing a particular thing, now that's in the back of your head, and that gives you that confidence to sit longer or try something different, get on the ground, or whatever that might be.
Right. No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Good way of putting it.
And so, during that time frame, as you started, you're realizing, okay, this is possible for that. Like, at least in my head, and you can tell me that I'm jumping ahead here, but for me, that really like kicked off like me using cameras a little bit, but it was, film cameras. I think I had 1 or 2. So like it was very strategic of where I was putting those out at. And then I think the digital cameras started coming not too long after that.
No, I don't know what the years.
I think 2009 is at least on my computer, because from the time you could put an SD card in those cameras, I have it on my computer cataloged. And I think it was 2009 was the first year I had one that was, so I would have been senior in high school in the fall of 2009. And that was, I remember, having that. But 2010, it was my first year in college. So I'd come back and I'd hunt some. But that was like the first year I was like really into it, because I remember I had a cuddy back flash camera, and that was like pretty dang good camera at that time, and the pictures quality was great.
Yeah.
I remember that, and I kind of slightly took over maybe one of your areas, moved in close, in there, and it was on this logging road. There's a scrape in this clear cut. I had 2 really nice bucks, including this big tall 8-point on camera, and they were middle of the night, but I was like, oh, I'm excited. And every weekend I'd come home from college, and in my freshman year, I'd come back to hunt during. I remember sitting in those trees in those clear cuts, and I can't remember if I think I was taking. I don't remember if I put a hang on in there.
Yeah, we had a hang on
preset.
there.
Was it a preset? Okay, yeah, that's what it was.
It helped you put it in.
Yeah, because you couldn't even get a climber in any of those trees because they were
pole stand.
Yeah, kind of pole stand like. Yeah. And I was hunting in there, and so I wouldn't say at the time it felt like I was hunting a lot, but I really wasn't because it was weekends, here or there. But I was in there, and I wasn't seeing that deer, and then. What was the date that you ended up shooting that
30th, October 30th.
October 30th?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I hunted them like 2 or 3 weekends. So
it was a Saturday morning. You were hunting that morning.
Yeah, but like a mile and a half away.
Yeah, closer to 2, yeah. Yeah, I kind of wrote that deer off. I thought I'm going to let Beau hunt that buck.
Because you were getting pictures of them too, weren't you?
Yeah, I did earlier in the when he was in velvet, and I lost him once he came out of velvet, and then you picked him up over. Well, I gave you that clear cut.
You did, yeah. You did,
but no, you picked him up over there, and you were picking him up quite frequent.
Yeah,
and I thought, well, looks like he's going to shoot another big one here.
Well, I don't think it was. Did I? All right, I'm trying to remember timelines here. So in 2009, the year before that, I missed him in that clear cut. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that. That's right.
I was on the ground. I was still hunting.
Yes.
That was during the era of me not being able to hit anything.
Yeah.
I
forgot about that.
I did. Yeah. I missed him. He was obviously smaller than what he was, but he was
a good buck then,
he was still a really good buck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed him in that clear cut. And I missed like 3 deer that year before because that was my senior year of high school, so I had more time to be able to hunt. That was right. And then I ended up killing my first deer, which you were with me on that. But now that I knew there was more to that story, and I'm just recalling it now with that 8-point.
Yeah. Yeah, that was 2010.
Yeah, 2010 when you ended up killing him.
Yeah.
But that was. But I missed him in 2009 because you gave me that spot, and then once I missed him, I claimed the clear cut.
Yeah, you took it over.
I said that, yeah, and you that was close to one of the last years that you allowed me to do that.
Yeah. But I was my setup for that was I was kind of in a transition area between your clear cut, even though it was good. Mile and 3/4 away, and another set of clear cuts. I kind of set up in what I thought, if they're going from one to the other, they would come through there, and it worked out.
Was it so you were hunting a scrape, right?
Yeah, there was a scrape there. Yeah, but it was a decent trail system, and it was actually similar setup to the other buck we talked to, where it wasn't on top; it was
on a bench.
Yep, on a bench, and then it wasn't too far where it dropped down into a little drainage. Yep.
Yeah, but so you weren't all the way up on top, but you were kind of on that first bench that was down there.
Yep.
Yeah, and I could probably, if you were to tell me, this evening, let's go there. I don't have a waypoint for it because that was when it was the GPSs on the Garmin GPS. That would have been Garmin GPS.
That was probably the Magellans,
Yeah, or the Magellans. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Did Garmin buy Magellan at that time?
I don't know. It might have been just they might have still been. I don't know what the The details aren't
Yeah,
there.
I'll never forget that GPS. You had that long.
I still have them.
Is it the 84?
Yeah.
What was the number on it?
It was Sport or the Pro.
Yeah, because you bought like multiple off eBay just in case that one broke, right?
Yeah. No, there was the Sport, then there was the Pro. The Pro, I think, was the color screen, but then there was, before that was just I think just the Magellan or the map. Well, that was the software we had to do on a computer. Mapson maybe, I can't remember. Now you're jogging my memory. But yeah, that was I mean, you could transfer waypoints onto a computer, onto a topo. Yeah, but that was a big breakthrough. Instead of doing the paper maps, and that was a big breakthrough as far as the hunting, or shortening the curve. So yeah, that was another.
Yeah. Well, because my first GPS was one of those. I think it was the same one you had, the Magellan. That was I don't know if it was either your old one or one that you picked up and got from. But I remember that, and then I ended up getting a Garmin that had a screen on it, and it was like, wow, and it had like color. It wasn't aerial, but like the topo was green versus being black and white through it, and that was a big deal. And then you throw it on that, you plug it into the USB drive and transfer your waypoints onto the computer so you could look at it that way. That I forgot that was around that.
What was an RS or the serial port you had to plug into?
Yeah, I don't.
And then it's connected in the back of the GPS where the cable.
Well, and during that, it's funny. Just the other day, I was thinking about a spot, and this is how I know that I'm getting older too, because I was thinking about a spot, and I was like, I look on Spartan Forge, and I'm like, I don't have any. There's no waypoint there. I know that this was here. And I was like, you know what? I think that was when I was using my GPS. And I was like, man, that's been I've been, hunting some of these areas a while, or I was trying to find some of those spots, or it felt like, oh, I was, just there 5-6 years ago. And it's like, okay, no, that was more like close to 20 years ago now, in some of those locations. But yeah, I'll never forget that. I remember when you shot that 8-point though, I was like, I was very excited, but I was kind of bummed at the same time, because I wanted that deer, and that was my first heartbreak deer of like, okay, I was hunting a specific buck. I would have shot anything really that came through, because at that, I don't know, I might have been a little bit of a snob at that point, because the year before was my first archery buck, which would have been 2009.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, still might be one of my oldest deer to date, an 8 or 9 year old buck. That you were in the tree with me at that point.
Yeah, only maybe 5 yards behind you.
Yeah. So I guess I can't remember if I've talked about this before, but even if I did, I'll go through it again. And we mentioned about me missing that 8-point in the clear cut in 2009. Well, it was sometime in early November. Uncle Francie called me. He shot a buck, and he's like, hey, can you come help me drag this buck? He said, go to here. I knew where he was at. He's like, you'll see my truck. He said, follow the stream down. And I said, and you'll run into me. He's like, there's no way you missed me. I'm like, okay. So find his truck, and I'm like, okay. I was like, well, there's a river down there below, and there's this little tiny like spring that's coming out of the hill here. I was like, well, obviously he's meaning the river, not this spring, or he would have said go up through there. So, or he said follow the stream up. That's what it was. But up would be going up this very small, again, one you could step across.
Probably dries up in the summer.
Yeah, that kind of stream. Or there's the river there, and I was like, okay. I said, yeah, he definitely went down to the river. So I went down to the river. I crossed the river, I remember it being kind of low at that time, but I got across it, and I was with Uncle Al came with me, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, because so he was confused too, so I don't feel as bad. And we started working our way up, and all of a sudden I found these giant scrapes. I mean, tore up, smelling like rotting buck. Like just, it was at that time, some of the best sign I had seen. And well, we had no sign of Uncle Francie, but I was like, oh, and I started looking at trees. I started picking trees out. By the time we got back, Francie was at the truck already. He's like, oh, thanks for the help, guys. That's like, I called you, but I'd found my new hunting spot at that point. And
yeah, because Uncle Francie was tagged out.
Yeah, he was tagged out. So I was like, all right. And he's like, yeah, go ahead, go hunt it. I was like, okay. So, and really from where he shot that deer to where I'd found that new spot was a couple miles because we went such opposite directions. And I'd went in there, and to cross, I don't know if we got rain after that or whatever. Maybe I got wet the first day, but I had to start taking in hip waders to cross. So I took in hip waders, and I'd drop them on the other bank, and then put my other, I think I had rubber boots, muck boots, or maybe one of the off brands at the time. I'd throw them on, go up, and I didn't have to go very far. I was sitting in the creek bottom where I was hunting. I got up there, and man, I was having action like no other. I completely missed 2 other bucks there, and I was on the verge of giving up with archery, and it was the last day, and you had tagged out at that point because you had tagged out. That I think it was that 7-point you shot that year.
No,
2004.
Oh yeah,
that was at 7
That had
point.
been at 7 point. Yep.
And you're like, I'll come with you. And
you wanted me to bring a camera, and then remember we were scrambling we didn't have batteries charged.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, we were going to film it. We were going to film you hunting.
Okay.
And
I don't remember that.
And it was getting to the point where we didn't have time to charge a battery. So it's just like, we got to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went in together. I went in with you.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And then I had there was no tree. We couldn't get no tree close to where you're at, so I was back.
We each had our climbers.
Yeah, we each had climbers.
And so I was hunting right in the bottom at that point, but I'd seen a couple of nicer bucks working just up above. I mean, it was only 40 yards off the bottom up the hill.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe a little further.
Yeah, 40 to 60, but.
Yeah, and there was a good scrape and trail system that was skirting off that side. So that's where we, had set up there. And all right, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember hearing a buck making a scrape in the bottom, right?
Yeah, I didn't hear it, but I remember you telling me that. Then you grunted.
Yep, and I grunted, and he came in.
Came in on a string.
On a string.
Yeah.
Came in. It was a perfect 20-yard shot.
Yeah.
And
from my view, it was like me watching a TV show.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, man, I wish we had that camera. I'm sure I would have screwed up that footage. But.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But it came in perfect. And then you stopped them, and I watched the arrow blow through them. And
and actually heart shot him. Like, he went and crashed, and I was like, I can kill something with a bow.
Yeah.
Like,
it was, how far of a shot? 12 yards, or was it?
I thought it was 20.
Was it 20? It could have been 20.
I thought it was right at 20 or somewhere in there. But yeah, it was like, I just remember like everything just feeling right. And when it released, I was like, okay, that's what a good shot feels like.
Yeah.
Like I remember it going through and getting that deer out. And yeah, he was only 13 or 14 inches inside spread. Super heavy, real heavy deer. He scored 126 and some change. Yeah. I can't remember if he was 8 or 9 years old. I mean, just gnarly old, real dark chocolate rack on him. It was pretty cool. And the funny thing about that was the year prior, 2000, okay, I got everything. I think I got everything mixed up there. Or no. Yeah, 2009. Sorry. 2009. But 2008, I had my film camera out and I got a picture of them on that, and it was like 5.5, 6 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's what it was. Sorry, I was getting some of the dates confused, but I shot him in 2009. 2008, I have pictures of him in velvet 5.5, 6 miles away. And it's just so funny because, again, on that film roll, you only got so many pictures, and I happen to have him on that. And that year in 2009 is when we moved to the SD card cameras. It was around that transition time, but I never had pictures of him in 2009 because it was just a new spot. I was just hunting that fresh sign, but that, I think, really kicked it off for me as far as being obsessed with trying to archery hunt, and specifically trying to hunt some a little bit better deer, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty fun.
Well, it's a natural progression. At least it seems like it is. Once you start harvesting deer, and it's just natural to have more of a challenge, and you just start raising the bar every year.
Yep.
And but no, it's been a fun ride.
And from like 2010 to the 2020 range, it seemed like it was really starting to fall into place for you as far as like consistently with some of these older age class deer and going through it. Was there any other deer in that time frame you can think of that was like a really good story or something that you can remember off the top of your head?
Stickers.
Well, that was 2021.
Oh, okay.
Even before him.
Oh, yeah. There was what year did I shoot that? 2015. I shot a good one off the ground the first day.
Oh yeah, so right back there on the wall.
20-inch 8-point. Really wasn't expecting much early season like that because I'm more of a scrape hunter. But the week prior, when I was putting out some cameras and checking some cameras, I came across a scrape that I did not have a camera on. It was all tore up on a bottom edge of this clear cut. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to throw a camera on here. I had one, put it on there. So the first day came around, and I remember it was raining pretty good that morning.
Yeah.
And I didn't go out right away because I don't get too excited usually about the first day because I'm not usually hunting a food source or something like that. But finally, I think I went out about 10 a.m. and I had my climber on my back. My plan was to go in and pull the camera card, climb the tree, and see what's coming at scrape, and hopefully it's a shooter. And when I got there was like 0 photos, and the scrape was just the way I left it a week prior.
Yeah.
Nothing come back through. I said, all right, so let's change game plan here. So I thought, well, you know what? It rained this morning. It's quiet walking. I'm just going to still hunt. So I ended up taking my climber back to my truck, put the climber back in my truck, and entered the clear cut with the wind in my face. Actually, it was a crosswind, and just kind of poking along. And I wasn't doing the only time I'd grunt is if I broke something. I wasn't intentionally breaking shit because I just thought it was too early.
Yeah.
This is what's October, first weekend of October, probably.
Yeah.
And when our season usually ends, or it might have been last Saturday of September. I can't remember that year. But so I'm just kind of just more scouting than anything else.
Yep.
And I heard, I knew I jumped a deer. I heard a little bit of crash, and I just heard heavy hoofs going away from me, and then it stopped. And they weren't that far, but I'm, the wind's still in my face. I'm thinking I might have jumped that deer, but there's no way he has any clue what I am.
Yeah.
I had a full head net on, full camel, and I just creeped along very slowly, another, 5 yards. And I got to where there was I'm in a clear cut, and there's an old tram road heading in a direction where it sounded like he ran. So I just stopped there and kind of got ready, and I pulled out my grunt call and just gave it a real soft grunt. I'm back. Let me back up. I grunted right after I heard the heavy hoofs, and then I went down. I hit that grassy road, and I look up, and he's just standing there looking at me straight on. And he allowed me to go to full draw, and I frontaled him, and I heard him crash, and it was just like, I could just tell from the frame he was one of the ones I wanted to shoot.
Yeah.
He definitely was on my list. Yeah. But so I think he was curious to what jumped him, and
Yeah,
I heard that soft grunt.
Hasn't really been anybody in the woods much yet.
No,
it's first day. Pressure hasn't been in there. Just a little bit curious.
Yeah.
Oh, that's I remember that because I remember getting some of the pictures in the yard back here, and it was rainy that day.
And that was one of the biggest bodied deer I had shot up to that date.
Really?
I know I had a heck of a time getting them in the truck. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one next to the TV, right?
Yep.
That's what I thought. And then, as you're going through, I remember it seemed like a few consecutive years that you had shot some over scrapes, in the bottoms, and you're going through it. But then came, I'm skipping over some things here, but 2021 was the year of stickers. Mm-hmm. And for anybody that's listening, I'll give you the podcast number to hear the full story on stickers. But that was an absolutely incredible deer. I mean, as you had put it before, a once in a lifetime deer. Mm-hmm. That if you never top it or come close to it, you're okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
And so during that time, what were some things, I guess, when you were going to hunt stickers, what was something that, from either the past hunts and those things that led you into helping you with him, or maybe some things that you'd learned from that deer specifically?
I guess when I finally narrowed them down, I was using the strategy of hunting downwind of clear cuts on the edges of them. Most of the time scrapes, but actually where I shot them, I guess there was a scrape there, but it wasn't a well tore up scrape. It wasn't something that you would, I got to throw a camera on this. Actually I did have a camera on it, and there was very few photos. But it was just mainly trying to figure him out more, because I was flooding. I kind of surrounded that clear cut with some cameras. But just hunting downward side edges of scrapes, transition areas.
Yeah.
So there was, it was the clear cuts behind me, and I was in a mix of hemlock and some undergrowth, and I could only go up. I think it was only 10 feet up off the ground as far as my platform. If I got any higher, the canopy wouldn't give me no shots. So I kind of, and I had, so that, I learned, you don't want to be too high and just try for that 5 or 10 yard shot. You want to maximize your opportunity.
Yep.
And also, I had a bird hunter come under me the day before, and, it's just, don't get discouraged and think that everything's blowed out of there now, because, you had an unexpected, another hunter, whatever it may be, or dogs running through. I learned to, that's part of what they deal with.
Yep.
And it's not every day, but throughout the season, they will deal with that. They will get bumped by bird hunters. They will get bumped by other archery hunters. But it's
not the end of the world.
No, it's not the end of the world. So, that's some of the things that I guess, earlier in my hunting career, if that bird hunter, when that bird hunter would have walked under me, I would have never went back to that stand.
Mm-hmm.
I would have went completely different area, thinking that area's blowed up. But so that's one of the lessons I carried into that season or other seasons prior to that.
Yep.
But and just being persistent. I knew I knew I had a real good opportunity at him that year, because other years I didn't find him hard-horned. I couldn't find where he rutted, and once I found that, then it's like, okay, now I'm in the game.
Yeah, well, I remember actually. I think one of the biggest takeaways is how I'll say it's one of the biggest takeaways from you hunting that deer is because it's stuck in Johnny's head. Is he always brings up to me like, I remember when Joe was telling me about hunting, looking for stickers. He goes, sometimes it isn't always where you think he is. It's when you've scouted all the areas and it's the only place that you haven't been.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, that, yeah, and in years prior,
like you've crossed off all those places.
Yeah, not to say that it won't, things might change and he might go to an area you were the year before, but yeah, it was, I eliminated a lot of areas on the years prior.
Because you'd have a bunch of pictures of them in the summer, but you'd never get them hard-horned.
Right.
For years.
Yep. And then it's just like, okay, and I've had this happen where I've hunted a buck and find out that he died in velvet. Somebody finds a dead head and full velvet. So it's like, if I want, when you're not picking photos up to give you that reassurance he's still alive, then it's just like, okay, I'm going to go hunt some other deer. And that's what I was doing prior to that in the same general area. But yeah, once I found him hard-horned, and it's like, okay, now we go.
Yeah.
That was a cat and mouse game.
Well, so, and then, for everyone that's listening to it, episode 219 of the podcast was the one where we went through like the full story on that deer and everything. But like, so, and if you're not familiar with it and haven't listened to it yet, it's a 170-inch 14 point that you spent, I don't know, there's all the pictures on the wall. There's that 5 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely 4 years. The fifth year, it was a 10, real nice 10. He didn't have any of the kickers, so I can't 100% identify that was him, but the other ones for sure.
But pretty close. Yeah. 5 years of looking for him, chasing him. I feel like hunting a deer, getting to learn for that long, those are some of those lessons or things that are ingrained in you. I know of even deer that didn't kill that I've chased that have taught me a bunch that I use. I think there is, in my opinion, I think it's really helpful even if you have a goal, say you have a goal of chasing a specific deer and you're hunting them, but you're okay and you're happy with shooting other deer. Even in that scenario, I think you learn a lot. But when you're focusing on one deer, you're trying to figure him out, but you end up learning a lot more in that period.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that year that I did shoot him, it was a mix of, I did sit in the stands a lot, but I was also on the ground a lot.
Yeah.
And I actually thought that I was going to kill him off the ground.
You had 2 encounters with him.
Yeah. I had 2 encounters on the ground with him. And leading into that, once I found him leading into that season, it's just like, yeah, that was where I thought I was going to kill him off the ground.
Yeah.
But if it was too dry to do that, then I was in a tree.
Yep.
And that's the other part of it is the confidence level. If I didn't have that confidence level, I'm sure, because there was days on end where I didn't see it, see him. Did see some doe. Only seen one other buck in that whole area that whole time. Yeah, so it's just a matter of having that confidence to stick with it.
Do you feel like when you say you only saw one other buck, do you feel like it was because that was his area?
Yeah, I think he was running the other ones out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's at least my thought or theory on it.
There was one other deer that hung around him. Is that the other one that you saw?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember that because there was a younger like 10-point or something that
Yes.
ran.
Yep. And I passed on him
Yep.
at one time. But and the other thing is too is if it wasn't for you and Mom too to, I make it sound like it was easy. I had the confidence, but there was a lot of times when I was second guessing.
Don't worry, I was about to bring that up.
And you guys are like, just giving me the reassurance to, talk me off the cliff, so to speak, that, go with your game plan and,
yeah,
it'll happen.
No, I remember distinctly two conversations. One was at the dinner table upstairs, and I came over and had dinner with you, Mom, and we were talking, and I was hunting, and you were hunting. Or no, I had tagged out already. That was the year I shot that one opening day. So
Yes.
I was obviously, I had a bunch of advice.
Yeah.
And,
No pressure.
I wasn't in the trenches as you were at that time, but I remember being like sitting there, and you were kind of in a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a bad mood, but you weren't as optimistic as you could be, and you'd already had 2 encounters by that point. And I remember Mom just being like, because you were saying something about like, I'm just gonna shoot any deer that comes in at this point, and you were like, and Mom was like, that's the deer you want. You've been putting in this work. That's the deer you're gonna shoot, and you didn't really want to hear it at that time. But then it got to a couple of days later, and it's getting close. I think you had one more day to be able to hunt, and we were at camp. And I said something to you about, because you were like, I'm shooting the first legal buck that I see. You're like, I'm shooting first legal buck I see tomorrow. And I was like,
that's my last day.
Yeah. And I was like, no, like I said, you got this. And you kind of got mad at me a little bit. And
I'll be honest with you. If another buck would have came in and it was legal, it might have been a different story.
But it did all work out on that last day of pretty much 3 weeks straight of, with the, you were working in between there and stuff a little bit. It might have been half days and stuff, but you were 3 weeks straight of hunting that deer.
Yeah.
From the beginning of it. And that was pretty awesome to be able to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I did just kind of move towards the end as we're wrapping things up. I wanted to recap a little bit of your 2025 season, because I realized I hadn't had you on since that. We did a podcast like probably less than a week before you shot your deer last year, but we didn't talk about like that late October time frame when you ended up shooting your deer. Actually, some of the listeners reminded me of that, so I wanted to bring that up.
Okay. There was the area that I ended up shooting this buck. He wasn't my number one on my list, but he was tied for 2, maybe 3. Mm-hmm. I think he was my number 2 buck. Looking back now, after I got him on the ground, but it was, we talked about, just hunting one particular buck and it being very frustrating. And, the year that, I didn't fill my tag, it was kind of, I'm just kind of sticking on one buck and so, it's just, I find for me about every 5 years, I'll just grind it out on one buck. Mm. It seems like, but so I try to get more than one buck on my list in an area. And if there's only one buck in a certain area, I may not even go to that area and go to a different area that maybe has a couple opportunities. So that's the way where I chose this area to go to, because I thought it was my best opportunity as far as the number of bucks that I would shoot personally.
Yep.
So I hunted that area, I don't know, maybe half dozen times, a couple mornings, couple evenings. It was the mid-Octobers, I think, when I started moving in there. So I might have only been in there about 3 or 4 times prior to that. But where I ended up shooting them, or where I thought I had the best chance of shooting my number 1 or this number 2 or even the number 3 buck, I needed an east wind. And that, leading into that day that I shot him, there was going to be an east wind, and then it was going to be a frosty morning as well. So, and I actually did change my game plan slightly based off it being a frosty morning, and not having just an east wind, because I knew once that frost started lifting, then I'd be bulletproof. Everything's just going to go straight up.
As your thermals.
The thermals. Yeah, it's just going to go straight up, and so I guess when I had two plans of entry, and I remember discussing them with you, and I ended up gambling on. There's actually three. I could have made it real easy on myself and just slipped in there, but I knew that that the easiest approach is not always the best approach. So I had probably close to a mile hike from where I parked, and but where I did gamble was I knew I was going to cross deer trails and cross one of the scrapes to get to the tree I wanted. Where if I would have did the other approach, it would probably have been a 1.5 mile loop, but it would have been iffy for the fact that the thermals in that bottom would have been going up to that select cut that I hunted, depending on what time I got there. If I was, so I narrowed it down to my approach, and then I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So, and I had rubber boots on, and I get to my tree, I climb my tree well before light. I think it was in at least an hour before it got light, and sure enough, as it's starting to get light, things are just starting to rise, and I guess it was around 8:30. I was doing some blind grunting, and I had just done some grunting, and I looked over to my right, and I could see a deer coming through the cut, and so when it kind of stopped, and then it actually started going behind me. So then I threw some more grunts out in this direction, and sure enough, he turns and he's coming. And then once I got eyes on him, it's like, okay, that's definitely one of the ones I wanted to shoot. And and then he probably, he hit a scrape at about 40 yards, but there was no shot there. And then I threw out a couple more grunts. Then he started coming. And then he started angling across, and I was at full draw now. And it was probably maybe 32-yard shot. I think it ended up being when I ranged it. But I settled the pin on him. He was slightly quartering to me, so I thought I'm going to slide it right behind the front shoulder. There's enough of an angle. It should be able to get both lungs and be good. Well, when I shot, it was the arrow looked funny. Something weird happened. I couldn't explain it. It looked like the arrow was back farther than I wanted it to go. So it's like, okay, he took off running, and it's like, I got to get him time. So I ended up stayed in a tree for probably 2, maybe 3 hours. And then finally I got down and checked my arrow. I did find my arrow, and it was just as I thought. It's like, it's a marginal shot. Better give it time. So I ended up backing out of there. And actually, I got a buddy of mine has a dog. So we ended up going in there. I ended up giving it 10 hours, I think it was. And we went in there and picked up the dog picked up the trail. And here is a good thing I waited, because the way the arrow went, it actually caught the shoulder blade, deflected off, or it went in the front shoulder, deflected off the shoulder blade, but then it came out and re-entered. It did catch it. Yeah, it did catch one lung, but it was mostly liver gut. And I bet that deer, he might, I don't know how long it took him to expire, but it was a good thing I played it safe and waited.
Yeah.
But
it was super cold that day. So you had no rush as far as pushing it.
But it was the way the dog took it. It actually had done a loop, and he come by me within 100 yards, but it was too thick in the clear cut to see him, and then went and only died about 100 yards from my stand.
Really?
But as the track, and there was blood, and we were finding blood, and as the track was, it was like 550 or was it 800 yards? I don't know. It was a ways. He did a pretty good circle. So
yeah, the dog definitely helps in that scenario. A lot. Where was I at? Because I wasn't around when you shot that
you weren't
deer.
here.
Was I in Ohio? Because that was in October still, right?
Yeah, that was 27th of October.
Yeah, I was in Ohio. Okay. Yeah, I was hunting in Ohio at that time. That makes sense. But yeah, I what broadhead were you using last year?
That was the Ramcat. Or no, I switched to. I had a Muzzy 3
bar. Was it? No, it wasn't the Trokar.
Just MX3s.
The MX3s. Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I'm surprised you got that deflection with those, because those are always pretty much a tried and true.
Punch right through the shoulder blade. I wish I wasn't aiming for the shoulder blade, but
yeah, you never know. Maybe like some point he moved his shoulder back right when it was hitting, and it caused it. It's kind of wild with the deflection on it, because there's been even times I don't think I'd ever had really talked about it much on the podcast, but I've been very down on a specific broadhead that I had tried. Remember that deer I shot in the shoulder years ago that it just like hit and like kind of fell down?
Yeah.
And it didn't penetrate at all. It was a G5 dead meat. And then I'd heard one other person, I think it was Lee Ellis I was talking to, that said he had a similar experience. But then I heard there was a ton of people I talked to that love those broadheads, and I was like, I just, I used them out in just Hawaii recently, access deer hunting. I had some left over, and I knew that I'd probably be missing some of those deer, so I was like, I'll use up some of these broadheads, and I was actually really impressed with how, and now they're a little bit of a smaller deer, but I punched right through that doe I shot, opposite side shoulder, punched it in half and had a 2.5 inch gap. So my whole point in saying that is sometimes anything can happen with many different broadheads when it comes down to it.
There's a lot of good broadheads out there.
Yeah.
And some people like expandables, and they're great. If you have but you got to definitely choose your shot wisely with them. But they do a lot of damage. They don't go far. I like to fix blades with the chisel points, just for the fact that a lot of times I'm on the ground and it might be a frontal, and or quartering to me or away, and I've lost very few deer with them.
Yep.
But it's just, you got to know how the broadhead can function too.
Yep.
You do your research. Whatever broadhead you use, just make sure you do your research.
The type of hunting you're doing or whatever.
And to know what wait for the shot, if you're hunting ag and you're on a food source, then you can wait for them and watch them for a while and pick the shot. I would go 100% expandable, just for the fact that they're not going to go far. Yep. You put a good shot. You got to hit where you aim too.
Yeah. No, I think with a well-tuned bow, like when my bows, I try to make sure they're tuned good, and so now even with whitetail hunting, I typically am carrying I have a 4-arrow quiver now, so 3 iron will wides, and then I carry 1 either hybrid or mechanical broadhead, and I always keep that for the follow-up, or if I'm in an area that just so happens that I feel pretty confident that it's going to be a broadside type of shot. But with whitetails, it's been a while since I've shot anything other than a fixed blade that I've shot with. But anyways, I just thought that I forgot about that part of that story with how it deflected like that.
Yeah, it's not Not a good story, but I mean, it did end well. I was able to claim the meat, and
it's nothing, good learning story.
Yeah, it's nothing that a hunter is ever wants to experience, but we all do eventually, and so but it's good. The animal was recovered and the meat was usable.
So you were saying that spot was. So that was that a big? Would you say that was a community scrape that you were hunting, or
no?
Was
it was actually
scrape line.
It was the setup was another top on top, but it was a select cut, but there was a lot of hemlock mixed in it that they did not take out during the select cut, and the regeneration is getting to the point to where there's some good browse in there. If you went in there in wintertime, it looks wide open. But there's a lot of beech, some scrub beech in there that were still holding their leaves, the time frame that I was in there. Some of the other trees had lost their leaves, but there's enough beech mixed in with them hemlock that there's cover.
Yep.
And, it's not, I'll be honest with you, it's not a setup that I probably would have done 5 or 10 years ago, just thinking it's too open. But I guess just based on my boots on the ground in that area and seeing the sign that was in there, I did have a camera on a scrape in there, and the activity, there was a lot of doe activity. They're definitely feeding in there. And it was getting to that point where, okay, this is where the bucks, and I'm sure the doe were bedding in there as well, or close by. It's just like, these bucks are going to start cruising. They're looking for that first one, so this is where I think I need to be.
Yep.
And, get them coming cruising through.
No, that makes sense. In the tree that you were in, I remember you even telling me about this. You were probably 10 feet up.
Yeah, it seemed like, it was 4 sticks, but, I wasn't, I know when I went back, when I was looking for my arrow, and when I went up to get my arrow, I'm looking back to try to, see my stand. It's like, where's my tree at? Well, here it's like only halfway. I'm looking at it like 30 feet up, but it was so open that.
So you think about like select cuts, like even if it can be somewhat thicker down low, as you look up, it's wide open.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to find trees in there that you have cover with. And so you were fairly in the open, but with a saddle, you were on the backside of where it was. But was there something funny that happened with your platform?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah, I did leave that part out. Yeah, when that buck was coming in, I kind of was shifting around a little bit, and when I got in the tree, I always seat the platform, and then I make sure the post is up against the tree, and I looked down. I didn't do that because it was dark.
Yeah.
And I just didn't do it right away. And as it's getting light, I remember looking down and I seen my post was away from the tree about an inch. But I shifted my feet around. I thought, I only planned on hunting till like 10 that morning. And then I just, so it's like, okay, yeah, it's good. Well, when that buck was coming in, I kind of shifted around and the platform kicked on me. So I'm trying to scramble up, and I wasn't at full draw yet, but there was some activity going on up in the tree that.
Well, so, and then for anybody that's not familiar with saddle hunting that's listening, so if you have a platform that has a post on it, so that was our old Timber Ninja one, if I remember right, the ledge that we had before we went from to the postless methods. But when you have a post, you get it set, and then you cam it over, and then once you're up there, pretty much you gotta like lift it up with your feet again, and then stomp down on that top of that, and then to really get it to dig in, and then cam it over. Which again, if you were setting it up in the daylight, one, you might do that already, or you might have got it even closer to begin with. But when you're doing it in the dark, sometimes you don't get those exactly right.
Oh.
And that was the whole reason for like when we changed one of the reasons we changed the design with like the kunai and now the MK of the postless design where you don't have to cam anything over after you have it set in there, because even with the best platforms, I use a bunch of them that were like that. It's really hard to get those seated right. And especially if I remember right, even the tree you were in wasn't fully alive either.
No.
So that makes it even harder to get.
I think it was a wildlife tree they left. The ones that has some hollowness too. Which it looked like a solid tree when I started climbing it. The farther I got up, it's like then. But I looked up. The top. There wasn't any widowmakers up there that I've had to get out of trees before after I got up. And it's like, oh no, as I got daylight. But this one, I felt confident I was safe.
Yeah. Well, and you were not supposed to. I didn't. This kind of came up sort of last minute, but your buck is done getting mounted at the taxidermist, so you could add it here and had it on camera. But it was that was pretty cool. I was excited when you ended up shooting that deer there in October.
Yeah, it was a long day.
Yeah,
of uncertainty.
Yeah,
but no, the dog definitely. Could we have found a body searching? Probably. I'm sure we would have, but would the meat have been good by the time? It probably have been the next morning.
Yeah.
But no, it was it all worked out well, and I'm very pleased with the buck I shot. And
yeah, and just overall good hunt and having that activity and coming in and doing kind of what they're supposed to.
Yep.
For that time of year.
Yep. It worked out. It was definitely followed the script, except for the platform shifting on me and the shot. But that didn't lead to the deflection of the shot. But just not sure exactly what I would do different on the arrow placement. I think I just hit a little bit further forward than I was aiming, like an inch or two.
Yeah, and even then, you still think, I would have thought that'd be good shot placement. I guess you just never know as far as with the angle of things, and again how he moved that you just get that
and
deflection.
maybe he shifted. More as I was releasing, from being at a good quarter to a strong quartering. I don't know. Things happen fast, and
they do.
So that may have happened too, but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, no, it's that was an awesome buck, and just an overall, it was a good season last year, because I'd shot mine the week prior to that. Someone else shot one in October in the family, didn't they? Or is it just us at the beginning? I feel like there was one more. Maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe it was just us that early.
Yeah.
But it was it was a good season. Thinking, okay, so after that, is there anything like when you think of over through this time frame, over these last almost 50 years of hunting, from those beginning stages to the last 15, 20 years, is there anything that sticks out as far as like things that are really burned in your mind as far as lessons that you remind yourself of every year when you're going out?
Lessons I've learned as far as mishaps, or lessons I've learned as far as leading to success?
And both.
Well, the mishaps, I forgot a lot of them. Then I'm re-educating myself at times on them now too.
Yeah.
But as far as the success, entry to your stand is key. You don't want to do shortcuts there, within reason. But if you blow them out before you even get to your tree, and you may not even know it, and you're not going to blow them out of the area, but you may ruin your chances that morning, especially if it's just a morning hunt you're doing. If you're doing all day sit, maybe it's not as critical, but I think it's still critical. You definitely want to plan your entries. And the shortest distance or the best or shortest path is not always the best path by any means. That's a big one with me. Also, playing the wind, playing the thermals, but leading into your stand placement or choosing is the scouting. I mean, you can use all the apps you want, using the terrain features, using the LiDAR, using the UAV, but boots on the ground is what verifies what's there. I knew from the UAV imagery that there was mixed hemlock within this select cut. To me, that's something I key in on, and I'm suspecting there's probably scrapes there, but you can't see that with any imagery. So it's you definitely got to put your boots on the ground, and this spot, I've been hunting this area on and off for probably the last 10 years, 12 years. So it's not it's kind of, I guess it's kind of a new spot, but yet it isn't. I've been through that, that select cut happened. I'm thinking it's about 5 years ago, if I remember right. But the year before, I've been seeing these scrapes in there for the last couple of years. And like I said, the vegetation or the new growth was getting prime for it's like, this is definitely going to be a feeding area.
Yep.
At least for the does and probably all day long.
Yep. And that's where that access really played into that of making sure, because they're probably feeding in there at night and probably into the morning hours a little bit and needing to make sure you're not blowing them out on your way in.
Yep.
No, that makes sense. What about behaviorally with you? Any behavioral tips or things that you've learned, say, thinking of whether it's a mistake or mindset or the style of hunting, anything like that comes to mind of like a learning?
Yeah, not jumping around. That's some of the times I forget that portion of it. It's easy to, if you sit in a stand a day or two and you're not seeing anything, it's like, I'm just going to go a whole different area. I'll just come back to this in a week, instead of grinding it out. And I think your chances increase your odds sticking with a certain area, as long as you have your access right and all the other things line up.
Yeah, and learning in those specific areas, maybe micro adjusting while you're in there, but versus a brand new area that you haven't spent the last few days in learning and seeing how the deer are moving or doing anything like that.
I mean, it's very easy to say, okay, I'm going to go a different area because it's a fresh.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot. You get a lot more confidence when you do that.
Yeah, but yeah, sticking with an area or a setup or certain, concentrating, I think is a lesson that sometimes I forget and do jump around. But seems like when you do stick with the plan, though, it works out.
Yep. And I think I'm going to speak for you a little bit, and I'll have you correct me on it if I'm saying it wrong. But, for those that are either newer to it or newer to the style hunting or newer to an area, I feel like a lot of your success that you're having now has come from those years of leading up to it and just compounding through the time. Now, when you jump to a new area, you might find success earlier because you've compounded all these skills through all these years of going through it and not getting discouraged with it and just enjoying that process as you're learning through it, because it just compounds. And I've heard you say it offline, and I know Johnny says it a lot too, of like it just starts building. You have these blocks, and as you're building, then it helps you get to places faster.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. No, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, builds that confidence, and confidence brings success, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap this one up. Thank you, Dad, for coming on again.
Thank you. And thank you for the knife again.
Yeah, no problem.
Beautiful.
And for everyone listening, thank you so much for, getting me to hear episode 500. Pretty wild to see that, and just really, really appreciate it. Love your feedback. Keep it coming. Like I said, I listen to it when you comment, whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, whatever, as far as suggestions with guests and topics and whatever else. I really appreciate that feedback and everything else. Go get entered to the giveaway. It's either in the link below in either in the description or show notes or however you want to say it, or just go to eastmeetswesthunt.com and you'll find that. Get entered in that big giveaway. And I guess with that being said, we'll see you next week, but thanks everyone for listening. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.